Generations 2, 3, and 4 are some of the biggest innovators in the Pokemon competitive scene. Generation 4 had the physical special split, making so many Pokemon that were previously unusable incredibly good. Generation 2 added in 2 new types and some rebalancing to prevent psychic types from dominating everything and everyone. Generation 3, however, added in abilities, which is one of the most important things a competitively viable Pokemon can have, and opens up a brand new world of possibilities. Today, I'm here to ask and answer a question about one of these possibilities. Can you beat Pokemon Ruby without dealing any damage or as a true pacifist? Now real quick to go over true pacifism, I can't use any moves that can do damage to my enemy at all. For instance, I've seen a few pacifist challenges that allow moves such as Confuse Ray, Swagger, Toxic, Will-O-Wisp, but that won't be happening here. If you've seen my no moves playthrough, this is going to be functionally similar. The only reason I allowed moves in the first place was that you can't use items in Gen 3 that don't have an effect. So no spamming Antidote 20,000 times to get past the first gym. You also can't go the Pokeball route because unlike Gen 5 where I can throw a Pokeball at Inn's Purloin 75 times until it commits suicide, in this game the trainer actually steals your fucking Pokeball, which, although incredibly reasonable, is still a bit sad. The only way I'll be able to do damage in this run, yet again, is with Pokemon abilities such as Poison Point, Flame Body, or Rough Skin, which are all luckily present in this generation. Also, Speed Up will be used very frequently. By the time I finished this challenge, the in-game time was at a solid 183 hours, and although that time could be reduced with better RNG, I'm not going to spend an entire fucking week recording me using Growl a billion times. Lastly, before we jump into the challenge, why Pokemon Ruby? Simply put, it's the middle ground of the 3 games. Emerald is by far the hardest, having to account for Team Magma and Aqua, some overall plot events being significantly longer or harder, gems being a lot more difficult, and some notable Pokemon being entirely absent. Sapphire is by far the easiest, with Team Aqua's Pokemon being easier to counter and having access to almost all the same Pokemon as Ruby does, but having a plus in being able to catch Sableye before the second gym. Since Ruby is the middle of the road for difficulty in these games, I decided to do that. With that out of the way, let's begin our Pokemon adventure through Hoenn. Or rather, we'll start here because our rival is a big doo-doo head. I named myself Fucko like any reasonable person would, and unlike Generation 5, your starter can actually impact the run significantly. Kind of. You're never going to use any of these starters due to their abilities, but you're always going to want to choose Torchic. The team that your rival uses is overall much easier to deal with if you choose Torchic, and Treecko isn't too awful either, but you never want to choose Mudkip. Admittedly, this isn't too massive of a difference, but since you're going to be benching your starter immediately, it's worth doing anyways. Moving forward, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire have one extremely good thing about it that no game before or after can compete with. It is by far the easiest start out of every game because of unnerfed pickup and Ralts. Just like the last video, we're going to get 6 pickup Pokemon, namely Zigzagoon, which is... he's incredible, goddammit, look at him. Anyways, in Ruby and Sapphire, pickup wasn't reliant on your Pokemon's level. Meaning as soon as you catch your first Zigzagoon, you can start potentially finding nuggets, rare candies, revives, ultra balls, stat boosting items, a lot of good shit. And unlike other generations where you have to find a specific Pokemon and swap out frequently so you wouldn't die, there's an incredibly easy Pokemon to grind with, being Ralts. At this level, Ralts only knows Growl, meaning until it starts struggling you don't have to worry about damage whatsoever. Speaking of which, let's talk about Struggle, which is a move that has a lot of differences between generations. So past Generation 4, Struggle does a percentage of its Pokemon's max HP as recoil damage. But before that, it was recoil damage based on how much damage that the move does, with Generations 2 and 3 being by far the worst with a measly quarter recoil damage. This makes setting up a lot harder to do in the late game because sure, you can have 4 times defense and heal constantly, but when the enemy Pokemon is only taking 2 to 4 damage per struggle, you're going to be there for a while. Luckily, since Struggle is a contact move, you can alleviate this slightly with an ability, but I'm getting a bit far ahead of myself and I need to start talking about the actual run now. The first thing that I did was catch 6 zigzagoons, name them all Bug for blatant reasons, and farm some wild ralts for a bit. Once I grinded a fair amount of money, I pushed forward, skipping most trainers I could, and caught a few new Pokemon. Nincada, which is absolutely vital later in the run, and 2 Shroomish to constantly swap out to try and get some Effect Spore procs. In Generations 4 and after, Effect Spore has a 30% chance to proc with 10% for each condition. In Generation 3, it's 10% with 3.3% for each condition. Since sleep is almost entirely worthless and paralysis is slightly less than ideal, you're really only going to get the thing that you want 3.3% of the time. If this sounds annoying or painful, it kind of is, but after Generation 5, I will take any source of damage that I can possibly get my grubby hands on. Fortunately for the first gym leader, and actually a theme that spreads throughout all of Hoenn, you can skip past all the trainers, meaning once you reach this town, we can immediately battle the first gym leader. Since Shroomish doesn't have any moves that don't do damage at this stage, we only have 2 real methods of passing turns: using healing items or swapping Pokemon. Using my bugs to growl did help my survivability, but with a lowly 3.3% chance to poison, this was admittedly a lot of trial and error. But after a few attempts I was able to poison the Geodude, stall it down, and then once the Nosepass started using Tackle, I managed to get yet another poison off after a sleep proc or 2, then all I had to do was heal up and win the battle, beating the first gym leader. Afterwards, I had to rescue some old dude's Wingull, gone his boat despite that being a pretty terrible idea as a fucking kid, and we are now at Duffer Town where the second gym is located. But we aren't going to challenge it quite yet. There's 2 major things that we need to do first. Firstly, we need to evolve our Nincada into Ninjask and Shedinja. Shedinja can entirely cancel out Brawly's Machop until it starts to struggle, and with Harden, Ninjask can take the few knockoffs that Makuhita can pull off. If you're playing on Sapphire, you can skip this step since you can luckily just get a Sableye here, but with Ruby we just have Mawile. So we need to grind this up. Fortunately for us, grinding has become much easier since in this same town we can obtain the old fishing rod. As fantastic as Ralts is for grinding, its only downside is that it has a measly 5% encounter rate, meaning it may take you a while to find one. With the old rod, we can grind almost anywhere against wild Magikarp, who only know Splash for quite a few levels. This significantly increases the pickup grinding, and within a modest 17 hours, I was able to get enough rare candies to evolve my Nincada into Shedinja and Ninjask. With a setup, using Growl and having a very favorable matchup with Ninjask and being able to completely null out Machop with Shedinja, the second gym leader was defeated with ease, and we were able to move forward to Slateport where we run into Team Magma yet again. This is where the encounters get a bit harder, with Numel being a fire type and being able to fuck my 2 highest level Pokemon with ease. But after using about 1,000 potions out of 1 billion, I was able to defeat them and move forward to the next strat where we have that Pokemon battle. You know, that one. Fortunately, since we chose Torchic, most of the Pokemon here are a lot easier to manage, with only Numel's Ember and Shrumish's Leech Seed being annoying. For comparison, if we chose Mudkip or Trico, your rival would have a Wailmer with Rollout, which can completely decimate us, a Combuskin with Ember, Peck, and Focus Energy, or a Grovyle with a generally nasty moveset. Compared to a Shroomish with Tackle and a Numel, this battle is the main reason you choose the starter that you do. After a lot of stalling, we were able to defeat our rival, skip past all the remaining trainers, and get a Pokemon that's hugely vital to this run: Roselia. Roselia has the Poison Point ability, which whenever hit with a contact move, you have a 30% chance to poison your enemy, excluding Poison or Steel types of course. Roselia is honestly rather mediocre, but as you'll come to see, almost all the Pokemon with standout abilities are painfully bad. But we also just unlocked the Muck Bike in the Pokemon Daycare. Obviously, when every battle takes as long as it does, being able to just go at Mach 27 up and down forever and grind your Pokemon extremely quickly and with ease is something you're going to want to take advantage of. This does come with the downside of your Pokemon learning new moves automatically, but fortunately for us there's the Move Reminder, who, and I hate to shock you with such a massive plot twist, Remind your Pokemon of their past moves. Holy fucking shit. Anyways, I grinded both my Roselias to level 47 and challenged a Mauville City gym. Since Watson uses Magnemite and Magneton, there's only one Pokemon I could potentially poison, being Voltorb. Luckily, since the only moves they know are Shockwave and Sonic Boom, stalling them out is pretty easy due to our resistances. Shedinja would have been great, but since Magnemite and Magneton both know Supersonic, I couldn't reliably use it. Again, after a lot of stalling with Roselia, we beat the fucking gym, obtained the Rock Smash gem, and went on a wild goose chase to Meteor Falls to rescue Cosmo since Wanda is nowhere to be seen. But not before I had to do more Capitalism. Luckily, since Roselia has Poison Point, grinding wild Pokemon is a lot quicker since all the Pokemon in this first route have contact moves, significantly increasing the speed of which we get our money. Speaking of Capitalism, although it isn't too necessary, once we beat Team Magma on Mount Chimney we can start buying lava cookies, which is a full heal for a third of the price. And we'll be wanting to purchase these whenever the time arises. I also went back to Slateport to unlock the Soda Pop, which is a better super potion for less than half of the cost. This is massive right now since even our level 47 Roselia only has 117 HP. And even in the late game you can spam it non-stop for a very cheap way to pass a turn and stay healthy. And probably get type 5 diabetes, cause I'm pretty sure I used at least 400 soda pops, but I digress. I'm American. After this and a bunch of binge purchases, I finally embarked to Mount Chimney to challenge Team Magma. Most of the grunts were easily dealt with, excluding the odd Golbat that couldn't be poisoned, but Maxie was a bit harder. Mightyena was easily dealt with, only knowing Bite as a damaging move, but Golbat and Camerupt was a bit more difficult. I don't do this too often, but I decided the best course of action was to bust out Scrim and spam Double Team and Sand Attack until Golbat started to struggle, and then I swapped into Roselia until it eventually struggled itself to death. Fortunately, Camerupt used Tackle fairly early and managed to get itself poisoned, and I was able to beat Maxie. And for the next gym, obviously Ninjask, Roselia, or Shedinja wasn't going to do too well against Flannery's fire types, so looking at her moves her team had and what was available, I decided the best pick to stall her out was Pelipper. I caught my Pikachu, grinded it to an unreasonably high level because I was intending to only use it here, but just like most things you start with ironically, it oddly managed to stick around for the entire game. Due to all the daycare grinding, I also backtracked to a few locations to find heart scales for the move reminder. Got my Pelipper a pretty sick moveset and went back to the gym. Just like a lot of gyms in Hoenn, it's entirely possible to skip over every trainer with a specific route, so I skipped past everything to challenge Flannery, who, rather unsurprisingly, wasn't too difficult. And I beat Flannery with the unbelievable power of the Pokemon daycare and being over double the level of the gym leader. Turns out that kind of helps, and afterwards I could challenge my dad in his normal type gym, but it honestly isn't too worth getting in depth with. The only Pokemon in that entire gym that gave me trouble was Zangoose due to its immunity to poison, but everything else was pitifully simple. Roselia was more toxic than a gaming subreddit, I T-posed over my dad viciously, unlocked Surf after traveling in a big fuck-off circle because I thought Wally was in a different town and not a literal house away from where I was at, and we can now get the next two team members, Sharpedo and Magcargo. Although, to be fair, I could have caught Slugma earlier, but I digress. Anyways, remember how I said earlier that the Pokemon with the best abilities are pretty bad? Well, here we go. Our Pokemon with rough skin is Sharpedo, due to it being its signature ability until Generation 5, and our Pokemon with Flame Body was Magcargo, since only it and Magmar have this ability, and Magmar isn't available. So real quick, let's go in depth with this and how this is fucking awful. Sharpedo, our only option for rough skin, has an astonishingly high defense and special defense stat of 40. For fucking comparison, Combee has higher defensive stats. Combee! And Magcargo is slightly less offensive due to having a defense stat of 120 and a special defense of 80. But Fire Rock is an awful typing, and even more than usual because it turns out having a 4 times weakness to water, in the generation with the most fucking water, is a bit of a problem. Oh, and you could be saying, oh, well you're playing Rubies, so I don't have to worry about water types. In which, haha, about that, 4 times weak to ground. You can't win here. And our only two Pokemon with the Poison Point are Roselia and Seadra. Although you can only get Seadra really late into the game, you can even evolve it to Kingdra, and it has a big overlap with Sharpedo, and its stats are hardly an improvement. I have a vague feeling you get the fucking point. This is probably the most emotion I've showed with my voice in a really long time, and I really do hope it makes sense because this team fucking sucks, and it's the best one we can get. I digress. With a ragtag group of failures at our side, we can move forward to the weather station, harass some Team Magma members out of their lunch money, battle our rival yet again, and move forward to the flying type gym. Luckily, Winona was yet another very easy gym, with every Pokemon being able to either be burned or poisoned. Altaria was kinda scary with its dragon dance, but other than that, it was still overall a very smooth experience. Afterwards, I pushed forward to Lily Cove, where you can have the option of challenging your rival for the last time. This battle was still essentially the same, with your rival not having a single evolution since the second battle, and only adding in a Swellow into their roster. There's a good reason I skimmed past a rival battle earlier, because the only difference between these battles are the occasional move swap and upgrade, but that's about it. Afterwards, I could go into the department store where I could buy everything from soft drinks, healing items, plushies I guess, really good HMs, and battle items. And after my shopping spree, I had to deal with Team Magma on Mount Pyre, and then the Magma hideout. By this point with my full roster, Team Magma had no threats that I can't deal with. The only minor threat being Numel, and I'm gonna use threat in air quotes there because it's fucking Numel. And after Team Magma was dealt with for the time being, I had to defeat the 7th gym, which was actually a significant challenge. Solrock and Lunatown counter everything on my team, and not even Shedinja can save me since Solrock has Flamethrower. The only way I could possibly deal with this gym was to struggle stall them, which was a pretty huge endeavor. Between Lunatown's stab Psychic with Calm Mind, Solrock setting up Sunny Day and Flamethrower, Solar Beam and Psychic, this was not an easy task. I found that the best way I could deal with this was to equip Magcargo with Light Screen and Amnesia, and use Sharpedo's Taunt and Pelipper's Stockpile to stall out as much PP as possible. Out of the two Pokemon, Solrock runs out of PP first, which is actually fantastic because I can then swap into Magcargo or Roselia to get a status effect on it, and once it's dead, Lunatown only knows Psychic type attack, so it can swap into Sharpedo and Shedinja to completely wall it off until it starts to struggle, finish it off, and beat the gym leaders. Afterwards, I invaded Steven's home, got Dive, and had to try and stop Groudon from making the sun particularly bright. Yet again, the grunts were easily dealt with, and even Maxie was easier than the last time I fought him due to my team's addition of Magcargo, and I beat Team Magma for the final time. But it's too late. Groudon has awoken, and I need to travel deep into the Cave of Origin for an exhilarating boss fight that made me feel a flurry of emotions that only a masterfully designed boss would make me feel. And I caught California. For good news, unlike Pokemon Black, there is actually use for Groudon due to its Drought ability. Before Gen 6, Drought and other weather moves used to last until another weather ability or effect was used. And since the next Pokemon gym is Water type with only 2 Pokemon that know Rain Dance, this was essentially a free 50% resistance to Water type attacks. And since this is yet again another gym that you can beat without challenging a single trainer, it was simple enough to beat the last gym leader and make my way towards Victory Road. The entire road only took about 12 minutes, all things considered, but Wally was a significant challenge. Magneton could do tons of damage without any possible resistance, Gardevoir could set up with Calm Mind to try and sweep me with Psychic, and since Future Sight used to hit Dark types in Gen 3, not even Sharpedo could save me. Or Shedinja, because that used to hit it too. Roselia has access to both Leech Seed and Toxic, and 2 stab abilities that deal pretty good damage. So overall it was a pretty challenging fight, but one that is manageable with proper swapping and Capitalism. After Wally, all that remained was the Elite Four and the Champion. And for this, I needed money. And I needed it a lot. Using Sharpedo on Route 1 with my Bug Squad, I grinded nearly $100,000 worth of money that I used for healing items, restores, battle items, and HMs. Some of the more valuable ones, like Reflect, I bought multiple of to help deal with PP. And if this sounds overkill, it kind of is, and no spoilers, but even with all of this, the Elite Four and Champion was still an extremely close endeavor. Could I have gotten better Pokemon? Kind of. When it comes to typing and defenses, but when it comes to abilities, this is all we got. So yeah, this is not a good team, to say the fucking least. Anyways, this is my Goon Squad, and then, and only then, I began the Elite Four starting with Sydney. Luckily, every Pokemon Sydney has can either be burned or poisoned, with a small exception for Shiftry since it has Fake Out, but since its only other ability is Extra Sensory, I can just swap into Sharpedo and completely wall it off, making Sydney an incredibly easy and relaxed start to this endeavor. But after that was Phoebe, who was a lot more difficult. With 2 out of 5 of the Pokemon being entirely immune to both poison and burns, my only option was PP stalling. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Davey, why is Bug still in your party? He literally can't do anything because he only has HM moves and is the second lowest Pokemon in your party, and even that's because there's literally no point in leveling Shedinja up? Simple answer. Why the actual fuck are you asking me why Bug is in my party? Are you a goddamn monster? Go fuck yourself. Okay, that's a bit mean, but you kinda deserve it, honestly. Anyways, Phoebe went Big Owie. And up next was Glacia with about as much diversity in her team as a conservative Facebook group. Fortunately, every single Pokemon she has can either be poisoned or burned. But the problem with that is Roselia and Magcargo aren't renowned for their thick resistances against ice and water, so it's always incredibly risky to try and pull it off. You can still burn Glalie with no issue, but with enough swapping around, I was able to poison and burn everyone on Glacia's team, even despite the full restores burning a hole in my pocket. We can move on to Drake, who is actually pretty easy. There's only 4 moves that he has that can counter my unholy duo. A Salamence with Flamethrower, a Flygon with Flamethrower again, and a Flygon with Fly and Dig. You can deal the first 2 pretty easily by just swapping into Magcargo, but the second Flygon was a bit more difficult since you have to constantly heal every time Flygon uses Fly against your Roselia. A lot of healing items were burnt on this one Pokemon, but it was ultimately worth it. And we get to move on to the final challenge of the game, Steven Stone. What a name. So our boy leads off with a Skarmory, in which one thing is already incredibly evident. Shedinja, despite how incredible they could be in this fight, absolutely cannot be used. Skarmory likes to set up spikes, and since we can't really stop it from using spikes, even by spamming Taunt, Shedinja is sadly forfeit from this fight. I lead off with Magcargo to get a good burnout on Skarmory with minimal resistance. And after a full restore, it died. Which afterwards was Aggron, which was heavily RNG reliant. Since Aggron is a steel type, it can only be burned. But the problem is that Aggron knows Earthquake, which easily one-shots Magcargo. Thunder doesn't make contact, Solar Beam doesn't make contact, and only Dragon Claw can get him burned. So it took fucking forever to try and get him burned. But fortunately, for whatever luck we have, Steven didn't use a full restore on it, which is fantastic since it's by far his most dangerous Pokemon, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Then he wanted to swap into Armaldo that has access to Water Pulse. Fortunately, its other 3 moves are contact moves that I can swap in Roselia against. But unfortunately, Aerial Ace has a pretty high chance of one-shotting it, so I had to constantly swap out to try and bait out a Slash or Ancient Power. Even so, I had to waste a few revives and healing items just to get past it. Afterwards was Claydol, which fortunately doesn't have an offensive Psychic move, so I can swap into Roselia to try and get it to use Ancient Power and poison itself, which I got pretty early on, fortunately enough. Then it was time for Cradily, who was probably the easiest thus far with no good way of dealing damage to my Roselia and being able to poison itself with Ancient Power. Then lastly was Steven's ace, Metagross. By this point I had almost no healing items left, with only 2 waters, 2 soda pops, 3 hyper potions, and 2 revives remaining. Yes, over $80,000 of healing items have been used in this segment alone. Like I said, this isn't as overkill as you probably thought it would have been. In my current state, I only had one option, bait out a burn or die. I healed up my Magcargo, and then Metagross used Meteor Mash, and Magcargo lived with 1 HP remaining and managed to burn it in its last dying breath. That 1 HP was all that stood in the way of defeat, with my Pelipper standing at 17 HP, my Sharpedo at a measly 4, Magcargo at half health and every healing item wasted and every other Pokemon dead, I was able to beat Steven Stone, mark my name in the Hall of Fame, and I was able to beat Pokemon Ruby as a true pacifist and without dealing any damage.